Kerr, coming back to you, if the priorities are there, people will find the money. Within your experience at the university's perspective, have you found the same sort of thing?
Yeah, if I look back to the history of some of our universities, there definitely has been some money put into squash. Just look at your University of Johannesburg's, who've dominated the university tournaments the last 8-9 years. They are putting serious money into scholarships, full-time scholarships for our top players, and that's great. That's so good for squash. That our top squash players are able to get a degree and play high level squash. And also, if you look at UJ again as an example, they're also able to offer evening classes. So your sort of pro players or players that are trying to get onto the sort of pro circuit are able to study, like a Shana Tucker, I think about a couple of years. Alexa Pina are able to manage getting a degree and also starting on the sort of PSA circuit. There is funding available at some universities, and so students are able to do both. And as I said beforehand, universities also obviously have the infrastructure from a courts perspective. I think in all our provinces, all our universities have at least 4 or 5 squash courts on their campus. Universities are able to offer coaches some sort of salary, it's not massive amounts of money, but it is something. So they definitely are putting money into squash and have the infrastructure and are able to therefore provide your high performance programs and your development programs, and they're doing it. Obviously I'm biased towards university sports, but I think it's a crucial part of our whole infrastructure of squash in this country. And time again, there's been so many examples of university players coming through the system and then going on to our national men and women's sides. And it's definitely the stepping stone to that next level. And I think, I just look back to like an Alex Fuller. I remember in India, she was, at the time, she was behind a Shana Tucker, our number 2 player. But at that tournament, she really showed belief and really showed that I think she won a very important game and got into the quarterfinals and came 7th something in the individuals. But for the first time, it showed that she had what it can take to get to the top. And then after that, she just blossomed. So, that's just one example. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. Mike, we've spoken a lot about the stepping stone that university can generate for those players. It's obviously not the only route available. The reality in our country is that there aren't enough classes for the students. From your perspective, and I'm asking specifically from the point of view of refereeing and your portfolio on international squash, rules committees and such, you've been involved with structures and organizations very different from what we have locally. How have you found those strategies differ from what perhaps we're doing in South Africa?
Okay, I'm not sure that I'm totally qualified to talk on structures as such, although obviously I have had exposure. So, but obviously I do come across them in the various countries I've been to, and I think that our structures in South Africa are pretty good and sound, generally. I think, as mentioned earlier, money and funding is a big thing. Within Africa, I think we're very fortunate. We're probably the best funded and best structured that I've come across. I've tried to help various other countries under my sort of regional portfolio. But again, right through Africa, virtually everyone from Namibia to Zambia to Zimbabwe, all the way through, always cite lack of funding as an issue for not having correct structures. And not just on the refereeing side, just generally all the way through. So even Egypt, which we would expect to have the very best structure because they've all got all the top players, it's from my experience anyway, it doesn't seem to be as well structured as you'd expect for such a top playing country. Obviously, there's so much support there for it, and in other countries like India, Malaysia, there's a lot of public support, and in those countries, funding which bolsters it up, and there's a lot of sponsorship and just general, even government and state funding, which comes into that. Other countries, I suppose, like Australia, which was extremely strong for a long period of time, where they had that, I think it was Pearl, probably no better, maybe they had a sports institute there where a lot of the players were developed within that. In most recent years, you'll see that even that hasn't worked well. And again, when I was there recently, there's talk of just lack of funding and support generally, I think. And it's all lately, I think, attached to success, so that funding will come out of medals at Commonwealth Games and some of these international tournaments. But just generally, I think our South African structures are pretty sound. It's just a matter of, I think communication was mentioned earlier between the different levels and different structures. I think that possibly could be improved. I'm not involved at that level, but it just sounds like, maybe there needs to be a bit more collaboration, coordination, and planning. But as I say, I'm not really in a position to speak confidently on those issues.
No, thank you, Mike. I think that's valuable insight. Ian, I think the same question to you around the structures and your experience. Further to that, my second thought would also be around there is a feeling of disconnect. We spoke a little bit earlier about increasing and heightening the profile of the sport amongst our different federations and National League was a piece of the pie. But I think the perception is that between masters, between sort of a senior body and junior body inside a region, there might be very little conversation. And I'd like your thoughts on that, having been around the block once or twice. Calvin, you've obviously worked over a couple of years managing a couple of different teams and events. The comment that was made in another one of my conversations recently was that players have had to dig very deep and graft and scramble and really hustle to make it through events, through tournaments, and then to make a career out of it. They've moved overseas, they've gone without support, they've really tried to set themselves up. Levels of tenacity are you finding in your juniors at the moment?
Yeah, I know. I think everybody wants to do it, like on a certain level. But, I think the difference is there's a huge disconnect between what you see on TV, as the top player out there and what have you, and where your level is, your level of talent, and your willingness and how much work you are prepared to put in. Because we've got really, really good talented juniors across the country. But I don't think they can fully appreciate just how hard you need to work, because they don't see the behind the scenes work that goes in for a junior to get to a top level. They watch the YouTube video and they watch the live on SuperSport and they say, look at these guys, I'm going to go and practice that one shot, this or that. For a lot of them, I don't think they realize what goes in behind the scenes. So, I think of just having the PSA tournaments in South Africa, and look, for example, Egypt. They send these young players of 15, 16 girls, and they come and they win these tournaments. 2 years later, they're competing in the top 20 in the world. From our kids, the exposure is at a very late level, and it's too little. So you go out there and you think the fact that you're going to a world tournament, a world champs or an international event, whatever, they get there and they think, oh, well, this is a great trip for me to go on. It's not about what are my goals for that event. It's more like I'm going there. It's a bit of a reward at times, and I'm going to have a great time. I'm going to meet new people, and squash is just like a vehicle that got them there. For me, we had that coaches workshop at TUKS not so long ago, and it was one of the things that we discussed there. Let's tap into our former players. Let's see, what did they have to do? What is the level we're looking at? Our proposal this year was to, for the World Junior Men's team, was to bring Adrian Hansen in, and say, here's a guy, he's traveled the world, he's been a seasoned pro, let him come and add some value to what these kids have to do. He's pretty straightforward. He doesn't mess around. He calls it like he sees it, and you know, if you're not good enough, you've got to hear it that you're not good enough, because too many people want to praise people because they have some talent, but they don't have the work ethic, you know, and you can't keep, you know, just keeping them in the system because they have potential. Potential has to be realized at some point. Otherwise, there's no end point, you know, because you can't just have talent. Talent's not enough. You know, it's what goes in behind the scenes that actually is the difference, you know. And I think just, you know, just to get that awareness of, and the kids need to appreciate how much work there is, because we've got lots of great athletes in South Africa, but the work ethic and the pathway, I think, for them to get what they're seeing on TV is very blurry for them, you know. I don't think they can really fully appreciate just how much work has to go in and how much dedication is involved to get to that next level. And we can do it. We definitely can do it. But I think there has to be a very clear path for them to be able to follow. It mustn't be like, we hope you get there one day.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Liz, if you could create just a vision as you see that pathway that Calvin's describing, how would you describe it now? And secondly, how would you propose we advertise and share this pathway to people? It's obviously not the only route, but I think the big issue is we can communicate these things perhaps a little bit better than we are doing now.
I do think, Paul, I think communication is the key to our whole squash program that we have at the moment. I think the national bodies, the National Federation, as well as the Schools Federation, need to work together and have one plan. Because at the moment, there's a very, very strong schools body, then there's a very separate university body, then there's a very separate senior body. And I think there, to get that pathway that Calvin was talking about, we have to create that pathway so that people can see what it is from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. It is very much at the moment, if your coach knows which way to go, then that's the way you're going to go. But a lot of the coaches don't know, because a lot of the coaches themselves, as Margo said earlier, they're not that qualified in coaching. They haven't had the experience of going overseas. They haven't played at that level. So they don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And I feel the National Federation, the provincial bodies, and that can do a lot more communication, can do a lot more planning. But I think it starts with Squash SA and SA Schools, basically. And as I say, consolidation. There's always some consolidation. I think we've got these fragments of absolute excellence. And if we can just get them all in the same pie, I think South African squash will move to a much higher level, new level.
Yeah, thank you. I'm definitely in agreement. Margo, I'm going to ask for your thoughts on that. My suspicion at the moment is that a lot of the relationships are personal. I know you know me, we get on, we'll keep in touch and we'll carry on from there. And over the years, it's built up. You know, that's how we build up our network. That's quite organic and I think quite natural. I think with federations and bodies, that's slightly different. You know, if you could talk a little bit about your past experience and certainly maybe a suggestion on how you think we can do better in that regard.
Yeah, well, let me, without stepping on any toes and with the greatest respect to everybody that does work out there for squash, let me use a really practical example. You know, SA School Squash has a program in place where we expose juniors at certain age groups to certain international competition. And then they get to under 19 and then, you know, you've got biannually for each gender, you've got World Juniors. And then that World Junior trip is a trip that's managed by Squash SA and not by SA School Squash. And there's some very blurred boundaries there, you know. There's an overlap to the extent that most of the Squash SA junior selectors are actually SA School selectors, right? But then it comes to, you know, setting programs in place for that and looking at a plan and a vision. And I can say to you that this year we tried very hard, and it's a great sadness that what's happened has happened in terms of the cancellation of World Juniors. I wish that they'd rather postponed it and delayed the age for those kids, because in our context, I think we were moving towards something really good. You know, we started trying to plan this last year already, looking at programs, looking at camps, looking at whatever needs to happen. However, that said, whose responsibility is it? What's the role and whose responsibility is it? Is it the role of Squash SA? Is it the role of SA schools? And there is quite a tense relationship there, because, let's just put it out front there. For example, funding. If you contribute funding to something, you need to have some level of let's not call it control, but some level of input or collaboration, or it's not just, okay, transfer done, here's the bank balance, thanks, we'll carry on, so there's a feeling that things need to be done more professionally, that there needs to be more structured planning, that and that you need manpower for. So again, absolutely no criticism on anybody. The fact that people are stretched, so more a case of let's pull this through, but let's get a committee going, someone to oversee it, but let's find people with the time to be able to do it, to support, so that we can do to the greater good of all, as opposed to one person ending up with a huge chunk to swallow. It's just not right, and then the chunk is unmanageable. So yeah, I think specifically, if we looked at something like World Juniors, I really think that that you could set a very nice pathway through, but then there needs to be a very great understanding of the roles and responsibilities. Where does it start? Where does it end? And there must be accountability. There must be a sense of, okay, you're expecting us to do A, B, C, D, and E, but then if you want that, then we need to also have some kind of opinion there, or have some kind of avenue for input. If I give you 50,000 Rand, you want to know, I'm going to want to know what you're going to do with my money. You know what I mean? So the bottom line is that it's all good and well to say, let's do this, but it needs to be on a professional managed business model, if I can put it that way, where things are structured and planned and organized. And sadly, let's face it, squash doesn't have the financial means to do that in this country right now, and even worse in the current climate, So I just say thank goodness for everybody that's prepared to work, because if there aren't pockets working, there'll be nothing. So while we try and get one big wallet to put all these pockets into, I think we have to be very grateful and thankful and value those who do what they do, because they all do it to the best of their ability with the means that they have, But yeah, that doesn't answer the question really in terms of how you're going to do it. That's another ball game on its own. It's a whole new conversation. But from a management point of view, I really do feel that there needs to be a structure in these things.
Ian, I hope we can hear you now. Calvin, the same question to you. I think you've worked across a couple of different levels. How are you finding the structures, not just vertically, from your federation as a SA schools perspective across provinces?
Yeah, well, look, we've from an SA schools point of view, we've really tried to become more in touch with the provinces. For example, now we've just been in, what's happening with our schools calendar now. We've lost potentially two of our biggest events due to the lockdown, and where do we go from here? There's still uncertainty about what the calendar lies ahead for the schools. And so, instead of just taking as a body and saying, let's just shut it down for the year, because there are kids out there that would be devastating for them, from our point of view, it's better to go to the provinces and push it out there and say, look, guys, we're in a bit of a quandary here. This is uncharted territory for everybody. What is the feeling from on the ground? We don't know what's happening in Northerns or Natal or wherever it may be. What is the feeling in your province? Do we want these events to go ahead? Should there be an opportunity for them to still take place? give us some of your feelings. I mean, get in touch with the people on the ground in your area, get back to us. Otherwise we as a body, we just say, okay, guys, we don't know what's happening. We've lost our June slot. We've lost our, the World Juniors is gone. So we can't qualify anybody, for national rankings. So let's just can it. I mean, this is April, now, yes, we don't know what the school timetables are, and it does affect when the kids will be available and clashes with other things and so on. But, I mean, to have that communication with the provinces is key, for some regions have one body controlling almost everybody, from masters, they're not necessarily different bodies. They're not even different organizations within those bodies. They're just one body calling the shots for everybody. So you can't possibly get a feel for doing exactly the right thing all the time, and for me, it's just about, talk to the people that are involved in those sections. They don't need to be on a committee. People don't want to serve on committees, there's nothing in it for them, but they want to have a lot to say. So let them say it, but in a more productive forum, where they don't get to just sit on the sidelines and shout the odds, delegate something for them to go and do. Set up a little task team. Let's give you're involved in this and this and this avenue. I'm going to task you with doing this or that. And they don't have to be on your committee, but you're asking them, you're delegating them with a certain task. You know what? They might actually take that on board and say, hey, I've actually been given some responsibility, and I might want to do good with that. So instead of having committees that just don't function and committees that don't talk to each other, and personal relationships get in the way, have a, like we're talking about a plan and different levels and things, but let's come together. Let's, like what we're doing here, let's discuss different avenues, different pathways forward. Let's delegate to certain people. Can you take care of this for us? I'll liaise with you, but it's over to you. Bring us, we'll bring you in on this level, but we'd like you to, we don't have the expertise. You can't expect people on the committee to know exactly everything about every single field. It's just not realistic, And for me, it's just about, I think, spreading the net a bit wider. There are a lot of people with that expertise out there, and let's bring them in, let's get them to share with us, give different opinions,
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I think you've hit the nail on the head, and there's been a lot of nodding, and I really wish we could see Ian, because your comment about no one wants to be on committees got him very excited. Kerr, I've pulled you in. Closing thoughts before we wrap this up.
Yeah, well, firstly, this sort of forum has been brilliant. So great to hear voices from all over the country, from different sectors. We need a lot more of this. I think only sort of the national convention does everyone sort of get together. Obviously universities, we also only get together once a year. But yeah, we definitely need to be collaborating better. I suppose you haven't really touched on sort of our PSA tournaments that we host in the country. I think those are also very crucial. I know it's, obviously we're involved with the West Province DCT Keith Granger tournament in Cape Town. Obviously there's the Gauteng, $5,500 tournament in Joburg, and the various satellite tournaments around the country. It's been very exciting. I think that's one of the positives. It's been very exciting to see how many satellite tournaments have been started. It's been very exciting to see so many Cypher players registering on the PSA circuit for the first time. There's the most Cypher registered players ever on the PSA circuit. So there is something that is what it is. I don't know how that's happened, but it's there, it's happened, and we need to keep on encouraging that and keep on supporting that. We need to support our national tournaments happening, and hopefully encourage all. We talk about our top players. On our shores, we've got great events, but our local players aren't playing in them. I'm not sure why. So anyway, as I said, just to wrap it up, brilliant forum. We need more of this, and I think we need to keep on communicating and keep on collaborating. I think we all are obviously on the same pathway. We all want squash to succeed in this country. And we're all passionate about this. We're all volunteers, giving up of our time. And there's so many South African squash players out there that are are willing to help. I just think of like a Natalie Granger in the States. She wants to help. Your Sean Roos, your Richard Castles. We've got so many great characters in this game, but they've got so much to offer as well. So somehow, if we can try and get all these opinions, all these guys to help and get them involved, really, I can see our game flourishing even more.
Thank you for that. I think PSA Challenger Series has been extraordinary. I had a factoid this morning that mentioned how Alexa Pienaar has managed to get into the top 100 in the world purely by playing PSAs locally. Mike, over to you. Closing thoughts.
Right. No, well, actually, I endorse pretty much everything that Kerr said. It's been a very useful discussion, this. And I think I also endorse what he says about the exposure to the PSA tournaments for our players to get that level of exposure that they need. And I think it's a new structure that the PSA have come up with regards to the smaller tournaments, the satellite tournaments everywhere, which is proving, I think, very successful. And it's probably why more of our players are playing. So for me, it's always, I think, it's just it's that exposure to international players, events, standards, and just getting a better understanding of what's involved, to have the heroes to look up to, and to just realize what's required. So in every respect, in playing, in understanding the rules and understanding what's required. And so I just hope we can all move towards it.
Brilliant, thank you. Margo, over to you, closing thoughts.
Yeah, I think we all want the magic cube to be completely perfect, but it's probably never going to be completely perfect. But yeah, for me, we have to continue to live in hope and believe that we can do good things and we can do great things for children, because ultimately it goes about the children. And if we're not giving to the children the passion that we have, the game won't grow. So it doesn't matter what we do, it starts at the bottom with the passion and the love and the care of the kids, because ultimately sport is built on love of what they do. So that for me is absolutely cardinal in all of this. And if you start with that, you can build so much more going forward. And obviously, my big card is that you need a massive financial contribution to get this right for kids. Times are tough.
Agreed. Yeah, thank you. They're the very, very stark words. I agree. Your thinking as we end off.
I think everything's pretty much been covered. I think thanks very much for organising this, and maybe more discussions and more sort of taking single things that have been mentioned and just discussing those further for the next step. Thanks very much.
Only a pleasure, and agree. Thank you. Great. Calvin, your closing thoughts.
Yeah, I think like everyone said, I mean, we're all coming from different levels of experience in terms of our own scenarios and things. But, you mentioned the word earlier about an organogram, it's great to have it on paper, but it needs to function. I think specific roles need to be there, but they need to be implemented. And everyone is very clear about what the responsibilities are and what and how they're going to go about achieving those roles, Otherwise, you have a portfolio, but it doesn't necessarily get done, and then it kind of falls back on a few individuals, and the workload, I think, just becomes too much at the point. So, let's do it properly. Let's follow models that actually work. Why do they work? Let's look at the organizations out there that are available or that are functioning, and let's see if we can't model ourselves on a working plan. Instead of trying to reinvent the wheel all the time.
Yeah, that's critical. Thank you, and I fully agree. Ian, we're going to try one more time. Let's see if it goes. Oh, still not. In the absence of that, guys, thank you very much. As I said, we definitely are going to keep this going, and we really need your feedback and inputs going forward on ideas and conversations.
Cheers, everyone. Cheers, Calvin.
Cheers, thank you.
Guys.
All right, cheers, everyone.
Bye.
All the best.
Bye.
All the best.
Cheers.